In a quiet suburban neighborhood, the Johnson family was enjoying a sunny Saturday afternoon in their backyard. The smell of grilled burgers wafted through the air, mingling with the laughter of children playing nearby. Grandparents Robert and Linda Johnson sat on a weathered bench, their faces illuminated by the joy of family. Their grandson, little Ethan, chased after colorful bubbles, his giggles echoing in the warm breeze. It was a scene of pure happiness, a snapshot of community life where worries seemed to fade away. However, across the street, a figure watched from behind a curtain. Mrs. Thompson, a longtime resident of the neighborhood, peered out with narrowed eyes. She had seen many families come and go over the years, and today's gathering felt different. Too many unfamiliar faces, too much noise. Something about it made her uneasy. Without a second thought, she picked up her phone and dialed the local police department, reporting what she perceived as suspicious activity. "There's a large group over here," she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. "I don't know if it's a party or something else, but it doesn't feel right." Minutes later, the tranquility of the afternoon was shattered by the arrival of a police cruiser. 2 officers stepped out, their demeanor a mix of authority and caution as they approached the Johnson family's backyard. The laughter and chatter faded into an uncomfortable silence, replaced by an air of tension. Robert stood up slowly, a polite smile on his face, while Linda clutched the edge of the picnic table, her heart racing. Officer Harris, a young man with a serious yet kind expression, introduced himself. "Good afternoon, everyone. We received a call about a gathering here. We just want to make sure everything's all right." His partner, Officer Lee, scanned the crowd, taking in a diverse mix of ages and backgrounds, noting that the gathering felt more like a family reunion than anything suspicious. "This is just a family barbecue, officers," Robert replied, his voice steady but tinged with hurt. "We've lived here for years. Nothing more than that." Linda added softly, "We're just enjoying some time with our children and grandchildren." Despite their warm tone, the officers' questions grew more probing. Were all these people related? Had there been any disturbances? How long had the gathering been going on? The friendly atmosphere turned tense, and the guests exchanged uneasy glances, some stepping back quietly, while others forced smiles to mask their discomfort. From the street, a few neighbors began to gather, drawn by the unusual sight of police officers at the Johnson home. Whispers floated through the air, a mix of curiosity and judgment. Mrs. Thompson watched with a self-satisfied nod, convinced her call was justified. Other neighbors, less certain, peered out with apprehension, caught between concern for the Johnsons and the unease stirred by the unexpected intrusion. Ethan, sensing the shift in mood, stopped chasing bubbles and ran to his grandmother's side, clutching her hand. Linda knelt down to reassure him, whispering gentle words to calm his fears. Officer Harris spoke again, this time more carefully. "We don't want to cause any trouble. We just want to make sure everyone is safe and that there's no misunderstanding." Robert appreciated the officer's attempt at diplomacy, but could not hide the sting of being questioned in his own home. "We understand," he replied, "but I hope you understand that this is just a family gathering, nothing more." As the officers continued their respectful but thorough check, the guests began to resume their seats, the tension easing slightly but not disappearing. Robert exchanged a glance with Linda, both aware that the day's joy had been overshadowed by suspicion. The presence of police, though well-intentioned, had cast a shadow over what should have been a simple celebration of family. The neighborhood's dynamics, often unspoken but deeply felt, had surfaced in this moment. The Johnsons knew the unspoken truth behind the call, the assumptions made, the fears projected. Yet they remained composed, determined to face the situation with grace and dignity, refusing to let prejudice mar their sense of home. As the officers prepared to leave, Officer Lee offered a small smile. "Thank you for your patience. We just want to make sure everyone feels safe." Robert nodded in return, appreciating the sentiment even as the weight of the afternoon lingered. The Johnson family returned to their seats, the picnic table once again the center of their gathering, but the laughter was quieter now, the conversations more tentative. Outside the fence, neighbors retreated behind their curtains, some thoughtful, others uneasy. The peaceful Saturday afternoon had been interrupted, and the neighborhood was left to grapple with the discomfort of that disruption. Yet amidst the unease, Robert and Linda held on to the bonds that had brought them together. The love of family, the strength of community, and the hope that understanding could one day overcome suspicion. As the police cruiser's taillights faded down the street, the Johnson family sat quietly, the earlier warmth of their gathering replaced by a fragile stillness. Yet beyond the wooden fence, the neighborhood's reactions began to unfurl in varied and telling ways. From behind lace curtains and partially drawn blinds, eyes watched the Johnsons with a mixture of curiosity, unease, and in some cases, unspoken judgment. The incident had stirred something beneath the surface, revealing fissures in the community that had long been overlooked. Mrs. Thompson, satisfied that her vigilance had prompted a response, shared her version of events with neighbors who gathered in small clusters on their porches. "I just thought it was unusual," she said, her voice edged with certainty. "There were too many people, and it went on for hours. You never know what might be happening." Her words hung in the air, a subtle undercurrent of suspicion that many found hard to dismiss outright. Others, less certain, exchanged glances and whispered in tones laced with discomfort. Mr. and Mrs. Green, who lived 2 houses down, frowned as they spoke to each other. "I don't know, Henry. The Johnsons have always been nice. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding." Her voice was soft, layered with a cautious hope that the incident wouldn't fracture the neighborhood's fragile harmony. Yet, even they couldn't ignore the unease that had settled among the residents. Inside the Johnson home, the family grappled with the aftermath. Robert stood by the kitchen window, watching as the last of their guests gathered their belongings and said quiet goodbyes. Linda moved between the rooms, her hands busy with clearing plates, but her mind heavy. The children, sensing the tension, avoided their usual games, their youthful energy subdued. Robert gathered his family in the living room, his tone calm but firm. "We've lived here for a long time," he said, "and we've always tried to be good neighbors. Today showed us that sometimes even that's not enough to prevent assumptions." His eyes met theirs, a mixture of sadness and resolve shining through. "We need to remember who we are and how we want to be seen." Linda nodded in agreement, her voice steady despite the hurt she felt. "We can't let fear or misunderstanding define us. We have to keep being ourselves, showing kindness and respect even when it's hard." Their children listened quietly, absorbing the weight of their parents' words, understanding that the incident was more than a disruption. It was a reflection of deeper issues. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's conversations grew more complex. At the local grocery store, Mr. Johnson, the longtime butcher, remarked casually to a customer, "I don't think there was any harm meant, but it's hard not to feel a little wary when you don't know everyone's business." His words revealed a common thread of cautious distance born from unfamiliarity and, at times, implicit bias. In contrast, Mrs. Patel, who owned the corner cafe, took a different stance. She spoke passionately to a group of regulars, emphasizing the importance of community and inclusion. "We have to challenge our assumptions," she urged. "The Johnsons have been here longer than most of us. We owe them respect and trust, not suspicion." Her voice carried the hope of bridging divides, of fostering understanding where prejudice might linger. As days passed, the Johnson family received gestures of support from some neighbors. A basket of freshly baked bread appeared on their doorstep, accompanied by a note expressing regret for the discomfort caused. Another neighbor, Mr. Jacobs, an elderly man known for his wisdom and kindness, stopped by to offer a reassuring handshake. "Don't let this shake your faith in our community," he said gently. "We're better than this moment." Despite these positive signs, the incident left a lingering sense of fragility. The Johnsons were acutely aware that the police questioning was not just about the gathering, but intertwined with broader societal challenges. Issues of racial profiling and mistrust that had shaped experiences far beyond their neighborhood. The officers had acted professionally, but the very fact of their presence had underscored a painful reality. Determined to address these challenges head-on, Robert began to consider how the family might engage with their neighbors more openly. "Maybe it's time we invite everyone over," he suggested one evening, sharing the idea with Linda. "A gathering where we can talk, listen, and learn from one another." Linda smiled, her eyes brightening. "Yes, a chance to build bridges, to show who we really are." Their children, too, expressed a desire to move beyond the awkwardness. Ethan, in his innocent way, asked if his friends could come over to play more often. His sister, Jasmine, hoped to organize a neighborhood game day, something to bring lightness back to the streets. The family's resolve to foster connection was growing, fueled by a shared belief that understanding could overcome suspicion. Yet, not all neighbors were ready to embrace change. Some remained distant, their attitudes shaped by years of unchallenged assumptions. Mrs. Thompson's vigilant watch continued, her eyes sharp and skeptical. The neighborhood was divided, a community at a crossroads between old fears and new possibilities. In the quiet moments, Robert and Linda held on to the hope that dialogue could heal the rifts. They spoke often about respect and inclusion, about the importance of confronting biases with empathy. Their story was becoming part of a larger conversation, one that extended beyond their backyard and touched the heart of what it meant to be a community. As the sun set each evening over the quiet streets, the Johnson family prepared for what lay ahead. The incident had unveiled uncomfortable truths, but it had also sparked a determination to build a neighborhood where every voice could be heard, where trust would be rebuilt, and where the simple joy of a family barbecue would no longer be met with suspicion. In that fragile space between fear and hope, the Johnsons stood firm, ready to face the challenges of their community with courage and grace, believing that understanding was a first step toward healing. The quiet tension that had settled over the Johnson household was unexpectedly broken one late afternoon when the front gate creaked open and a tall figure stepped onto the porch. His presence immediately commanded attention. It was David Johnson, the couple's eldest son, returning home from a trip. His arrival was unremarkable in ordinary circumstances, but today it was poised to shift the neighborhood's undercurrent in a profound way. David was dressed sharply, his posture confident yet approachable. As he crossed the threshold into the crowded living room, he was greeted by hugs from his younger siblings and a relieved smile from his parents. Yet the energy in the room was different, now charged with a new sense of possibility. Robert rose to greet him, a subtle pride shining through the weariness in his eyes. "David, you're just in time," he said quietly, gesturing to the group gathered nearby. "There's been some tension." David's brow furrowed as he looked around, taking in the subdued expressions and the remnants of the day's gathering. "I heard about the police visit," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern. "What happened?" Before Robert could reply, a gentle knock sounded at the door. It was Officer Harris, the younger officer who had been part of the earlier visit. He stood hesitantly on the threshold, his face a mixture of respect and uncertainty. "Mr. Johnson?" he asked. David nodded, stepping forward. "Yes, I'm David Johnson." The officer's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through them. "I wasn't aware," he began, then paused, the weight of unspoken assumptions hanging in the air. David smiled warmly but firmly. "I'm the town's mayor," he said simply, the revelation rippling through the room like a sudden gust of wind. Neighbors who had gathered outside the window, drawn by the unfolding scene, caught snippets of the conversation and exchanged surprised glances. The dynamics of the afternoon shifted instantly. Officer Lee appeared behind Harris, her expression unreadable but noticeably more guarded. "Mayor Johnson," she said formally, stepping inside with a nod of acknowledgement. "We regret any misunderstanding." David extended his hand, bridging the gap between authority and community. "I understand the need for safety," he said, "but this situation highlights how quickly assumptions can lead to division." Robert exhaled, a mixture of relief and validation washing over him. "It's difficult to explain when there's a shadow of suspicion before anything happens," he said. "We've lived here for years, been part of this community, yet today felt like we were strangers in our own neighborhood." David turned to the neighbors who had now gathered in the doorway and on the porch, their faces a mix of curiosity, embarrassment, and reflection. "I want to assure everyone," he said, "that my family is committed to this community. We want to build bridges, not walls." Mrs. Thompson, who had been watching from across the street, shifted uncomfortably. The flush of embarrassment was evident as she stepped forward hesitantly. I didn't realize," she stammered. "I only wanted to be cautious." David nodded, his tone gentle but resolute. "Caution is understandable, but it can't come at the cost of respect and trust." His words hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation. Officer Harris spoke up, his voice sincere. This has been a learning moment for us as well. We strive to serve all members of the community without bias. He glanced at his partner, who nodded in agreement. The neighbors began to murmur among themselves. The earlier division softened by the mayor's presence and his call for unity. Mr. Jacobs, the elderly neighbor who had offered quiet support, stepped forward. We've all made mistakes, he said kindly. What matters is how we move forward. David smiled, appreciating the sentiment. Exactly. This is an opportunity to start fresh, to have honest conversations about the challenges we face and how we can overcome them together. Linda, who had been quietly observing, spoke softly. We want to be part of this community's future, not just its history. The conversation turned toward plans for bringing neighbors together, ideas for community events, forums for dialogue, and ways to celebrate the neighborhood's diversity. The atmosphere, once heavy with suspicion, began to brighten with hope. Outside, the neighborhood's watchful eyes softened. Children who had been silent now peeked from behind their parents, sensing the shift in the air. The stories whispered across fences started to change from doubt to curiosity, from fear to possibility. David's role as mayor lent weight to the moment, but it was his willingness to listen and to lead by example that resonated most deeply. He acknowledged the pain caused by assumptions and bias, but emphasized the power of empathy and understanding to heal those wounds. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm glow over the quiet street, the Johnson family and their neighbors stood on the cusp of change. The revelation of David's identity was more than a surprise. It was a catalyst for reflection and growth. The officers, now guests rather than enforcers, stayed to talk with residents, answering questions and sharing their commitment to fairness. Mrs. Thompson, though still uneasy, expressed a tentative willingness to reconsider her views. Others voiced similar sentiments, opening the door to dialogue. Yet, amid the progress, the weight of the afternoon's events lingered. The incident was a mirror reflecting deeper societal issues, racial profiling, mistrust, and the fragile nature of community bonds. It was clear that the path forward would require more than gestures. It demanded ongoing effort, honesty, and courage. David looked around at the faces illuminated by porch lights and evening shadows. We have work to do, he said quietly. But I believe we can create a neighborhood where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. Robert reached out, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. You reminded us all what it means to be a community. The gathering slowly dispersed as night settled in, neighbors returning to their homes with thoughts stirred and hearts opened. The Johnson family remained on their porch a little longer, savoring the fragile hope that had blossomed from a day marked by misunderstanding. In that moment, the neighborhood stood at a crossroads between division and unity, fear and hope. The story was far from over, but the seeds of change had been planted, promising a future shaped by respect, empathy, and shared humanity. In the days that followed the unexpected visit from their son, Mayor David Johnson, the neighborhood slowly began to stir with conversations that had long been absent or unspoken. The Johnson family, steadfast in their commitment to healing the rift created by suspicion and misunderstanding, took the initiative to transform a painful moment into a catalyst for community reflection and growth. Robert and Linda, along with David and the younger Johnson siblings, extended invitations to their neighbors for a community barbecue, an event designed not merely to share food, but to open hearts and minds. Flyers were distributed by hand, invitations shared at local shops, and messages sent through neighborhood groups. The family's hope was simple yet profound: to foster dialogue, encourage empathy, and rebuild the bonds of trust that had frayed. The day of the gathering arrived with a gentle warmth in the air, reminiscent of the first barbecue disrupted weeks earlier, but now carrying a different energy, one of cautious optimism. Neighbors trickled into the Johnsons' yard, some tentative, others eager to participate. The familiar picnic tables groaned under the weight of dishes brought by various households, symbolizing a collective effort toward unity. Mrs. Patel, the cafe owner, who had earlier spoken passionately about inclusion, arrived with a platter of spiced samosas, greeting the Johnsons with a warm smile. Mr. Jacobs, the elderly neighbor, settled comfortably in his favorite chair, ready to share stories from the neighborhood's past to remind everyone of the community's shared history. As the afternoon unfolded, conversations blossomed around the tables. Neighbors who had previously kept their distance found themselves engaged in earnest discussions about respect, inclusion, and the impact of prejudice. Topics that were difficult but necessary. The Johnson family listened attentively, sharing their experiences without anger but with honesty, inviting others to understand the pain caused by assumptions and bias. Children played freely in the yard, their laughter weaving through the adult conversations, a hopeful soundtrack underscoring the day's purpose. Ethan and Jasmine took turns organizing games, their youthful enthusiasm a reminder of the future they all desired, a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. 81 point. Mrs. Thompson approached Robert and Linda, her demeanor more reflective than the last time they had met. "I want to apologize," she said quietly. "I realize now that I let my fears overshadow my judgment. Thank you for inviting me today." Linda reached out, taking her hand with gentle squeeze. "That means more than you know," she replied. "We all have to start somewhere." The officers who had previously visited the Johnson home were also present, having accepted the family's invitation. They spoke openly about the importance of community trust and vowed to work toward greater sensitivity and fairness in their duties. Their presence was a tangible step toward bridging divides and restoring faith in local institutions. Throughout the gathering, Mayor David Johnson addressed the crowd with humility and hope. "This event is more than a barbecue," he said. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we commit to understanding each other. We must confront our biases, listen with empathy, and build a community where everyone feels valued and safe." His words resonated deeply, sparking nods and thoughtful expressions. The dialogue that followed was marked by a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, to ask hard questions, and to envision a neighborhood transformed by inclusion. Throughout the gathering, Mayor David Johnson addressed the crowd with humility and hope. "This event is more than a barbecue," he said. "It's a symbol of what we can achieve when we commit to understanding each other. We must confront our biases, listen with empathy, and build a community where everyone feels valued and safe." His words resonated deeply, sparking nods and thoughtful expressions. The dialogue that followed was marked by a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, to ask hard questions, and to envision a neighborhood transformed by inclusion. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the yard, the barriers that seemed so insurmountable weeks before appeared less daunting. Neighbors exchanged phone numbers, plans were made for future gatherings, and a tentative but genuine sense of solidarity took root. Robert watched the scene with quiet pride. The journey had been difficult, but the Johnson family's dignity and grace had opened a door for healing. Linda leaned against him, her eyes shining with tears of relief and joy. "We've come a long way," she whispered. David joined them, his voice steady and full of conviction. "This is just the beginning. True community requires ongoing effort, but today proves it's possible." The story of the Johnson family's experience became a touchstone for the neighborhood, a reminder of the power of empathy, respect, and the courage to confront prejudice. It sparked conversations beyond their street, inspiring other communities to reflect on their own dynamics and the importance of inclusion. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood continued to evolve. New friendships blossomed. Community events grew in size and spirit, and the shadows of suspicion gradually gave way to light. The Johnson family remained at the heart of this transformation. Their resilience was a beacon of hope. Their story underscored universal truth, that communities are not built solely on proximity, but on the willingness to see each other's humanity, to listen without judgment, and to embrace the diversity that enriches us all. Through their experience, the Johnsons demonstrated that conflict, when met with dignity and openness, can become an opportunity for growth, turning division into unity, fear into understanding, and strangers into neighbors. As laughter filled the air once more and the neighborhood gathered beneath the stars, the promise of a more compassionate, inclusive community shone brightly, a testament to the strength of shared humanity and the power of hope. The barbecue ended, but the questions didn't. Why did it take a title for them to be treated with dignity? What if their son hadn't shown up? And how many other families won't be so lucky? The Johnsons may have found peace that day, but across America, families like theirs are still waiting. So before you scroll, ask yourself, would this have happened on your street? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit subscribe, like, and share because these are the stories that need to be heard.